Yeah.
How have you been, Jimmy?
I've been great. I've been enjoying the apocalypse, and I've been enjoying watching. It's as if a foreign government has taken over America and is trying to destroy it. But it's not a foreign government; it's our government. So
Right.
I've been enjoying watching that show, and I've also been enjoying watching the media protect the government as it does it. It's kind of hilarious.
It's very
Um,
sad to watch your videos now at the end. It's so sad because you go, this is where I would tell people about the live shows coming up, but we don't have any. So
yeah, I know. And then I would tell you to go join my premium, but nobody's got a job, so just enjoy the video.
right.
I just wanted to say, I don't know how you are all feeling. I am ready to go out and get this virus and get back to life. I was just saying before we started that it depends on what the death rate is. If the death rate's under 1%, I think we're overreacting. But I don't know what the real death rate is. And so there's a lot of people making a point, and I think it's a good argument. I think it's worthy of debate that if the pain and suffering, meaning death, which would be created by an economic depression, which we're creating, that will cause pain and death. So if that pain and death caused by the economic devastation and depression that's coming that may never leave, if that is greater than the pain and suffering caused by the virus, then we're not making a rational choice.
Right.
But we need to get the right data. So you keep getting people are some people say they're underreporting the deaths, and then you hear they're overreporting the deaths. They're telling doctors in the hospitals to overreport. Doesn't matter. And then they're saying, well, people are being buried and you don't know if they died from it.
Right.
And so I don't know what the real numbers are, but so that's what we got to get to, because there's a lot of pain and suffering being caused by this. And by the way, our government and the oligarchs use this crisis to loot the metaphor Dylan Radigan used on my show is, let's think of the United States as a car. And your car broke down on the freeway and it's out of gas. Everybody knows you want to put more gas in it. Instead, what the government did was they came in, they stole the tires and ripped the radio out of it. And they left it without gas.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what we're living through. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but when I watch other news, people have no idea what's coming or what really happened. They have a vague idea it wasn't good enough yet, and they still think we can fix this. They have no idea that the country has been given over to rapacious oligarchs, and our country's not going to look the same coming out of this ever. And the people who were supposed to do something about this and step on the brake pedal and sound the alarm did not do that. And this was their moment. And I keep seeing news people say things they're treating the CARES Act like it was just another vote, instead of what it really was the biggest upward transfer of wealth in the history of humankind. And it will remake this country forever. And people have no idea what's coming. We're going to have a permanent underclass. We're going to have permanent long-term unemployment. We're going to have states reducing services because people can't afford to pay taxes, and states have to balance their budgets. And we have a bunch of rapacious oligarchs live in Washington who aren't going to help us. And we have a bunch of progressives who we thought were going to fight for us who are rolling over at nuclear speed inexplicably, with not getting a goddamn thing back. At least Mitch McConnell, you know what he's getting. What the fuck is the squad, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, getting? They're getting nothing except invitations to parties.
Okay, this is that area I definitely want to talk about with you, because you've tweeted out things like Bernie is a complete hack now and sad, and
it's unbelievable what has happened to him.
Let's explore that. Like, what are your chief complaints? Like, I mean, the CARES Act is a big one, right? Because that was the whole thing. Radical piece of legislation that all these people voted for. But what is that? Is that what you're talking about, or is it the supporting Biden? And okay,
no, it's all of it. But it starts with the CARES Act. Mm-hmm. So, and people say, well, what did you want Bernie to do? People who have no idea how government works. People have no idea what's inside the CARES Act. People have no idea how you're supposed to pressure politicians instead of defend them. They say things like, well, what was a Bernie supposed to do? What are you, in sixth grade? Why do you think they give the power to every single senator to stop a bill? You can put a hold on a bill. Why do you think they give them that power? So they could use it when it's important.
Right.
So
yeah. Which actually has always been one of Bernie's points.
And he didn't do it. He didn't put a hold on the bill and then try to alert the country what was inside the bill, because I don't even think he knew what was in it, because he didn't write one sentence of it, even though he pretended he did. People pretended that Bernie Sanders did something for that bill when he gave a grandstanding speech. And then he sends me emails telling me all the stuff he got for me in that bill. It's maddening. And by the way, the rest of the progressive politicians. And then I turn on the news and I see progressive news people saying that they're heroes. Right after the Cures Act had passed, they were calling Bernie Sanders a hero. And other people in Congress, too. And I'm going to tell you, there's no heroes here. There's nothing but bad guys who are doing evil things to our country while trying to distract us with online news shows with Cardi B. That's what Bernie Sanders has turned into, a late-night talk show host who's completely ineffective as a senator and tweets out platitudes and will not use the power of his movement to get anything done. The reason why you don't drop out of a presidential campaign when half the states haven't voted is because you're supposed to be leading a movement, you fucking jag-off. You're not supposed to be... that's not what the leader of a movement does in the middle of a campaign, drops out and tells you to endorse. Hey, everybody's not only that, but then shames his own supporters into voting for the problem. And Bernie Sanders is actively lying to his own followers and the country by telling you need to vote for Joe Biden without telling you he's demented. And all he has to do is say, Joe Biden is obviously demented and I should be the nominee. This is ridiculous. You guys are lying. You're saying Trump's a liar? What are you doing? You're trying to gaslight the entire country by serving them up a hot piece of garbage, a demented walking death rattle who they couldn't even beat in a fucking primary. They're going to put up against the guy who they say is an existential threat. This is an unbelievable failure and a collapse of government, the Democratic Party, and our entire society. And Bernie's voting for it.
Okay, we've had this discussion a lot in the show. Like, is somebody in Bernie's position? Is it his responsibility to threaten to take his voters elsewhere? Right? Like, is that what they should be doing?
Yeah.
Or
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, on a related note, maybe a good way to structure this question is like, let's say, Jimmy, that you had been running Bernie Sanders' campaign, right?
He would have won.
Right. So let's say you're running his campaign and we get to the point where we're at, where there's the moderate consolidation and all that stuff. What do you tell him to do at this point?
Well, first of all, I would have been priming the American public for that moment to happen. I would have been saying, watch, I don't know what they're going to do. I would have started by pointing out how they cheated in 2016 just to remind everybody what happened. In fact, I would have never let them forget about it for the last 5 years, but he did on purpose. And so when that happened, you could point to it, you could see, and then people could put those pieces of the puzzle together in their own head. And then you say, and they're doing this at the behest of Barack Obama, which is another guy he never made a critique of, which is why his campaign never had the oomph it should have had, because who is he fighting against, Donald Trump or the Democratic Party? The problem is the Democratic Party. We all know that, which is why he lost those white working class voters. So what he should have done was call that out. And then he should have said, do you know what they're doing? They're coalescing. The corporatists are now coalescing behind a guy who has visible dementia. That's how desperate they are to cling to power. And that would have changed the narrative they won't even talk about his dementia when he can't answer a question in a news interview. They won't even say, are you feeling okay? Hey, has your doctor said you don't have dementia? No, they won't do anything.
It's really elder abuse to not say anything.
Yes, it all started with not questioning. Well, there's a new, you can say Donald Trump has dementia till the cows come home, but you can't bring that up around Joe Biden. Somehow then you turn into some kind of crazy bad journalist.
An ableist. You're being ableist. Woke button. We'd have to hit the woke button.
So that's what I would have done with Bernie Sanders. And all he has to do still to this day is say, hey, let's stop this charade. Joe Biden can't even finish a goddamn sentence. Because you know who is saying that? Donald Trump.
Right.
So it's going to be said. So that's the point of a primary, FYI, is you test the opponents and you see how they react to these attacks and their vulnerabilities.
Right.
So when they go into the general, this has already been sorted out. This has not been sorted out, just like it wasn't sorted out with Hillary Clinton. And, Bernie Sanders, instead of saying it's important that the nominee who's being investigated by the FBI, we understand what that investigation's about. Instead, he said, I don't care about your damn emails.
Enough
and then he said, and every time somebody asked him in 2020, hey, do you think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump? He said, of course I do. Joe Biden is a great guy. He's a friend of mine, and he can beat Donald Trump. Well, guess what? You just forfeited the election.
Why am I voting for you then?
Why would I vote for you? Because they told me if I vote for you, every time I turn on the TV or read a newspaper, if I vote for Bernie Sanders, we're going to lose the House and the Senate. So I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because of what Bernie Sanders just told me. And why is Bernie Sanders saying those things? It's obvious why he's saying those things. It doesn't take a genius, which is why I know it. He's saying those things because he's weak, cowardly, and doesn't want to end up like Ralph Nader. So he's willing to sell out the entire country at this moment when we need him more than ever because he doesn't want to be treated like Ralph Nader was treated. And that's a fact. If you can tell me another reason why he would do the inexplicable garbage he's doing, I'm open to hear it. But nobody can come up with an idea. They like to blame everybody. I saw an interview the other day of a Democratic apparatchik who was on his Unity Commission, who doesn't blame Bernie for his own goddamn campaign and capitulation. He blames the aides underneath him. They blame the aides underneath them because that's what that saying was, right? The buck stops somewhere underneath the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the only other option, right, is that about what is motivating Bernie now. You could say to be as charitable as possible, right? You could say he knows that the Dems won't let him win. And so the DNC, he knows the DNC won't let him win. So if that's true, then he needs to back the guy who's in it. I don't necessarily agree. Okay, yeah, push back.
Okay, but why for decades have Democrats always worried about what the voters in the middle are going to do? Because they're worried that the voters in the middle are going to run to the Democratic Party because they will, right? And what Bernie's doing in this moment is signaling to everybody that you just don't have to worry about our voters because we're going to be there. Right. We're going to be on board for you, right? And which just is an open invitation to ignore all these people. Yeah.
Well, right now, Bernie Sanders is at the end. He concluded his campaign, called it a victory because he's got these task forces, right, which are less than a joke. He's such an ineffectual leader on purpose that he couldn't even get Nina Turner on a task force that is meaningless. Which again, at the same time, the congressional Democrats are passing a HEROES Act, which is just a wish list anyway, which doesn't even have progressive priorities in it, even though they know it's not even going to pass. That's how bad it is. And the progressives won't even stand up to Nancy Pelosi. So I've been on a tirade trying to get the Democrats who are considered progressives to call out the leadership. They keep pretending it's the Republicans that are the problem, when we all know it's Nancy Pelosi engineering this, along with Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. So just as Nancy Pelosi rips up his speech, she's passing his legislative agenda. Right. So just as she's calling him fat or whatever, she's humiliating the Progressive Caucus once again. Humiliated. And they still vote for her. And I'm going to echo what Norman Solomon said last fall when he wrote an article after the entire Progressive Caucus, including the squad, voted to expand the security state and give more spying powers. And he said, what is the point of voting for progressives if they're just going to vote with the security state anyway? And I say, there is no point, Norman. You are correct. And I say, what is the point of voting for progressives who don't take corporate money if they're going to take instructions and bend the knee from the people who do? The only reason Nancy Pelosi is powerful and they're afraid of her is because she takes the most money. She's the most corrupt person in the Congress, and then she distributes that money. That's where her power comes from. And they don't take that money, yet they bend the knee to her anyway. It passed 96-0. The ultimate screwing of America. They got cover for it. The evil oligarchs got cover for it. So Bernie Sanders and the progressives went from just being, ineffectual but they went to actually be doing evil by then giving cover for this horrible bill, because now everybody can say, what are you talking about? It passed 96-0. And you're saying this is the screwing of America? Well, why would Bernie Sanders vote for a thing that screws America? Why would Elizabeth Warren vote? So they literally did evil. It wasn't, they're not just making bad votes, or they didn't know what was going on.
The bad guys.
They not, empowering and giving cover to. And if you're not angry about that, that's a defect inside of your personality and your intellect, because you don't know exactly what's happening and you don't realize the seriousness of the situation. Just like people who try to dismiss Russiagate as, oh, who cares about that? Well, because you don't understand the ramifications of the last 3 years of Russiagate. That's why you try to dismiss it.
Just going back to the CARES Act, do you think they're doing this because they want to cover it up, or because they don't understand what's in the bill? Like
they don't understand. They didn't. I don't even think they understood what was in the bill. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupt you.
Yeah, no, because when I first started calling around about it, there were two huge things that I think many members of the caucus didn't get. One was that the tax break in the bill, like they didn't score it until after the bill was passed. And it's like $190 billion tax break. So it's as big as some of the bailout programs. Then the idea that the $455 billion Wall Street side of the equation is going to be leveraged up at least 10 times. So it's really, like a 4 trillion or 4.5 trillion. Yeah, and I think they didn't understand that, because people will tell you, oh, 3/4 of the money went to ordinary people. Like they actually believe. I mean, I guess the question is, do they not know, or are they being, insincere?
I don't know. I can't judge why they're doing exactly what they're doing. It's sad if they don't know. I think that's even worse. You don't know. So Matt Stoller was on my show, and he said that Bernie doesn't know what was in that bill. I don't know how he would know that, but I guess because he's worked in Washington a long time and he's worked with Bernie. So it seems to me that from what I can ascertain about Bernie's personality and the way he works from other people who have worked with him, is that he doesn't go into the weeds. He doesn't listen. And he just has, if it doesn't relate to his stump speech, he doesn't really have anything to say about it. And so I don't know why they exactly did it. If they didn't, I have a feeling they didn't know what was going to come from the bill, what the ramifications of it actually were, which just goes to show their incompetence. Once again, you don't have a financial guy on your staff. You don't have a guy who knows how Wall Street works, how the Fed works, how all this shit works, and yet you think you're going to be able to legislate for people? You don't know. Then you're, again, a fucking loser, and it's a waste of a vote for you. And but what Bernie did and Warren, what we actually did, it was on purpose. So when AOC gets up and she starts waving her arms and screaming against the Republicans and saying this bill has crumbs for working people, she's right. Yet she only calls out the Republicans. So if she knew there were crumbs in it for the working people and she screamed about it and that video went viral, I'm pretty sure that the rest of the squad knew it. I'm pretty sure Bernie Sanders knew it. Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, Ro Khanna, Tulsi Gabbard. I'm sure they all knew it. So and what are they rolling over for? AOC rolls over for a goddamn committee assignment. That's what they're rolling over for.
What was the most disappointing part of the campaign season, the primary season for you, watching the way that unfolded? Last time we talked to you was in the middle of it, like the early stages of it, but so much.
The most disappointing by far for me is when Tulsi Gabbard dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden, because I thought she was making the proper critique all the way along, right? She was doing what I had been urging Bernie to do from the start. In fact, I had a conversation with Tulsi where I said, this is what Bernie should be doing. And she did every one of those things. She called out the establishment. She called out the corporatists. She called out the intelligence community for Russiagating. She didn't Russiagate. It was unbelievable. You have a person in the military not Russiagating, calling out the intelligence community and telling you the truth about our foreign war. So I was so excited about her because she was doing the proper critiques and she had the gravitas of being a soldier and serving in those illegal wars, right? So to have her drop out and endorse Joe Biden was
before Bernie had even dropped out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of confusion about why that happened. I think again that was mishandled by the Bernie Sanders campaign. They make enemies out of friends, and that's exactly what they did that through the whole campaign with Tulsi. She was the only one who had Bernie's back at every turn. He's still doing video nighttime talk shows on YouTube with fucking Elizabeth Warren, and they still shun everybody. It's just so it's I've heard from every activist that worked on Bernie's campaign in 2016 that the 2020 campaign were a bunch of corporate assholes who didn't want anything to do with the grassroots. In California here, the biggest corporatist motherfucker is this guy Anthony Rendon, who's the Speaker of the House, the Assembly. And that's why we don't have single payer in California, because they all run on it. And then when they get there, they go, I don't know how to do it. We don't have I don't know. How can you do it? That's who Bernie was working with. That's who Chuck Rocha called up to go staff Bernie's camp. These assholes. I mean, look at who. And by the way, he's staying in the camp. He's staying in the race, kind of. So people just so there isn't a third party. It looks like, so people can vote for him, so he can have influence over the goddamn. It's the people that they're replacing Bernie activist delegates with corporatist delegates. I know people who are inside the Bernie campaign who are seeing these people that Bernie is putting forward as the delegates now, and they go, I've never even heard their names before. I don't even know who they are. Well, they're right from Joe Biden. They're corporatists because they don't want to have a replay of what happened in 2016. And if you remember what happened in 2016, Bernie's delegates knew they were cheated. They knew the corporatists were cheating Bernie, and so they were raucous, like you're supposed to be at a convention. So Bernie's been a go-along. He's a Democrat. That's the irony. He's not an independent. You know that. I know that. He's a Democrat through and through, which is why he'll never challenge Chuck Schumer. He'll never challenge Nancy Pelosi. And he votes for the screwing of America while pretending he got you something, and then sends you emails. And then he does tweets all day about all the stuff we have to do after he gave away all his leverage. And he proved he'll never use his movement. He'll never use the power of his movement. And so what's the fucking point of it? Nothing. Bernie Sanders, the end of his career, I don't know how you survive, because people are going to find out what happened in this CARES Act when they have to live through it. And Bernie's going to be running around saying, we got to have all these things. Meanwhile, telling you to vote for Joe Biden, who's never going to give you those things. And he's never using his power to get. So right now, Bernie's done. He stopped using his leverage to try to get things done. Months ago, he stopped doing that. Just so you know, this moment was tailor-made. It was as if Jesus, the Lord, invented this moment for Bernie Sanders to rise up and he won't fucking meet the moment. On purpose, he won't meet the moment.
I think that it's interesting, the question of the Ralph Nader thing. So there are two issues here. One is like, and I know I don't love doing the psychoanalysis stuff, but it's okay because we so rarely do it, and we certainly don't waste our time doing it with Trump, which is the biggest like waste of time. And I need another op-ed written about his like mental state. But do you think that when you said he doesn't want to be Nader, do you think that you're saying like on a personal level he doesn't want to be blamed as a spoiler, or you mean that you don't mean that he doesn't want
to be kicked out of the club?
Yeah.
Because Nader did not spoil it. That was
so
not
I'm not
Nader,
making that up.
Right.
That came right out of Bernie's mouth. He told Chris Hedges and Shama Sawant in 2015 when they were urging him to run third party, and he said no. And they asked him why, and he said, because I don't want to end up like Ralph Nader. That came right out of Bernie's mouth. I didn't make that up. This isn't some theory of mine.
Right. But do you think he meant that as in like he didn't want to cause the Dems to lose, or you think he meant that as like a more of a
if he still thought in 2015 that Ralph Nader caused the Dems to lose, then he disqualified for being a fucking senator in the first place. But he also Russiagated, which should have disqualified him. And he won't stand up for the people in a moment like this, which should also disqualify him. And Bernie is showing his true goddamn colors. It's really easy to give speeches and say you want shit. But when it comes time to use your power to get it and fight for it, that's the big fucking difference. And he's never going to do that.
So the Russiagate stuff is just unraveling like at light speed in the last few weeks. And it looks like it's going to become a major issue in the general election campaign. Like, but Biden's name is now mixed up in ways that we never thought before. Is this why it was such a mistake for people like Bernie to ignore this issue? Because now it's going to be 1,000 times more of an issue going forward because the Democrats didn't deal with it when they had a chance.
It gets in the way of a natural selection process.
So, do you think that it's just a weird happenstance, coincidence that a nightclub comedian who smokes pot when he gets up in the morning was able to see through Russiagate from day one but a sitting senator who's been inside politics for 40 years didn't see that this was a complete fucking scam by the Democratic Party to make sure we didn't actually do an autopsy on what the hell, how a Democratic Party could lose to a political novice game show host, the most well-moneyed political and powerful machine in the history of the Democratic Party, maybe in the world, lost to a novice game show host who was really offensive. Somehow but so they never did that autopsy. They did Russiagate instead. Why, again, at the same time, fast tracking his judges, helping him deregulate Wall Street again, giving him an extra $131 billion to do bomb war, as they say, and then they expand his spying powers as they say he's a traitor to our country and should be impeached. So those things don't go together. What that tells you is this is professional wrestling, that Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump work for the same guy because of what is wrestling? Wrestling is they're being paid by the same guy, and we already know what the outcome is. So we already know what the outcome is, and they're all being paid by the same guy, and this is all performative theater. When AOC gets up and screams, when Bernie did that speech for the CARES Act, pretending he got you something, that was also performative theater. That CARES Act was already set to pass, and the deal was already set, and Bernie got up and gave a grandstanding speech about a part of the bill he didn't even write. So I don't know what the question was, but I'll end there.
It was just about Russiagate. I mean, I was trying to give you a chance to do a little end zone dance on that. I mean,
and also, and Aaron Mate, who said, before you do, I totally want you to do an end zone dance, but just to add this in, it's Aaron Mate really thinks that Bernie concretely screwed himself by wasting time on the Russiagate stuff, and he also thinks that the Russiagators were intentionally using that against Sanders.
Of course.
Sure they were.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh, well, so Bernie Sanders knows Russiagate is garbage. He goes along with it because he's weak, like he always is. He never really stands up to the establishment. And he pushes red bait, an evidence-free conspiracy theory that red baits the president and anybody who happens to be a political enemy of the Democratic Party, and even MSNBC doesn't like at the moment. And Bernie plays into that instead of standing up and having the courage of Aaron Mate, or me, or Matt, or Glenn Greenwald, or Kyle Kalinske. He doesn't. I
had you all on. Give me some. I get some courage, cred.
And I'll give Katie Helper the props because you brought us on. And so you don't have the courage of a fucking podcaster? Get the fuck out of my life. Are you shitting me? And then he goes on, and then of course, and I said it in 2016 when they started this shit. I was telling Cenk Uygur and anybody who would listen at the Young Turks, which was 0 people, that that this is if you know anything about history, this is always used against the left. So if you prop up this red baiting narrative, they're going to come and use this against Bernie. And of course, right before the Nevada caucus, all of a sudden the intelligence community says that the Russians are propping up Bernie, and now Bernie looks like a fucking idiot because he propped up that narrative, which is now used to undermine him. And then so they ask him about it, and he goes, "Yep, well, Putin should stay out of our." He just sounded like so when this whole campaign, he sounded like anybody else who was a Democrat. And that's why he lost. He wasn't attacking the establishment of the Democratic Party. He kept running around calling Donald Trump a racist. That wasn't the key to your success, Bernie, in 2016. Your failure was predicted by Chris Hedges' article at Too Broody. He said that his 20 campaign would be a shadow of its former self as it was in 2016, and he would immediately usher in the corporatists. That's exactly what Bernie Sanders did. It is jaw-droppingly remarkable what has happened. And not only that, so the Russiagate is completely debunked now. The CrowdStrike, which was the people who were running the server who said it was Russia. I bring Bill Binney on my show immediately that week. Bill Binney, which was the top code breaker from the NSA. He was a whistleblower. He outsmarted the FBI when they tried to entrap him. Bill Binney came on my show and he said if that happened, the NSA would have evidence of it and they would release it. They haven't released that evidence and it hasn't leaked, which means they don't have that evidence. This didn't happen. I've been saying that for 4 years. You know how much shit I took for that? Yeah. You know how many lefties came at me for that? Calling me a conspiracy theorist as they were pushing the number. They're calling Donald Trump a conspiracy theorist and a fake news. Trump was right. They were full of fake news. They're all evidence-free conspiracy theorists. Let's remember what manufacturing consent has taught us. The primary function of the media is to manufacture consent. And if they're not doing that, they're gone. So why you guys would ever give a fuck about anybody in journalism in America is a mind blower to me, after the entirety of this profession did a evidence-free red baiting conspiracy theory on the president of the United States in aid of one political party. And they suppressed the evidence that would have debunked their theory. It would be one thing if they got it wrong. Right. Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow never once invited me on, never once invited Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mate, anybody to debunk or Matt Taibbi to go against their narrative. Not once, which means they're 100% propagandists. So why anyone would ever give a shit about what anybody in the New York Times, the Intercept, or the fucking MSNBC would ever say about them is a mind blower to me. Those people are abject failures and propagandists. 100%, and I'm better than them by a long shot, and I'm not even fucking trying.
Right, but they're not even manufacturing consent terribly well anymore, right? So, like, I mean, the question I wanted to ask is, you're in this new space in the media now that its influence is just, growing rapidly, and I feel like mainstream news outlets are not aware of how little impact they have on the way people think compared to people like you and other independent voices. I mean, are they just sort of blind to their decline in influence, do you think?
The news media consistently gets low grades for trust from American people. But yet they still seem to have amazing influence, because look what just happened in this Democratic primary, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, that was 100% manufactured by the media, 100%. So it was aided and abetted by Bernie 100% also. Yeah. I mean, when you run around telling everybody, yeah, you're right, Russia's helping me and Joe Biden's a great guy, you can beat Trump. What the? The media still do have power. They still are ubiquitous. You still, every airport, every bar, even though, we're locked down, but it's on, right? Yeah. So, I mean, whenever my college roommate calls me up, I'm like, I'm going to find out what MSNBC's been saying. And that's exactly,
But you keep picking up. That's so nice of you. You got to be in touch. You have to have your finger on the pulse of what these people are picking up, right? What's working, right. What's sticking. Yeah.
And as Sam Harris used to say, he always liked debating Christian fundamentalists, because you never know what crazy thing's going to come out of their mouth next, right? And that's how I feel about people who watch MSNBC and read the New York Times. You never know what crazy shit is going to come out of their mouth next.
There's been a whole cottage industry of people in the last 4 years in both comedy and journalism whose entire repertoire is either making jokes about Trump or just talking about how terrible he is. And I know this is a thing, but can you just talk about the sort of crime of intellectual obviousness and how it's become like such a pervasive thing? It seems to be a focus of yours in your show, is just this relentless.
So people ask me, they're like, hey, why don't you make fun of Trump more? I'm like, I think everybody else has it covered.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You can't get away from it. Last night, it's funny. I was sitting in my TV room and the TV was on. I had it on pause, and then it just started playing again. And it started playing Stephen Colbert's show. It was on, and he's doing Trump. I was like, okay. And then later, I don't know what, last night, Seth Meyers' show comes on my TV. And so I'm like, to me, Seth is I can stomach him the most, right?
And he was hard on Meghan McCain that one time.
One time he. So he did that. So it was like 25 minutes of straight Trump jokes. And I finally turned to Steph and I go, Steph, she goes, is that all they do? Right, I think that. I tweeted out last night, if I was a late night talk show host, I would try to mix it up and do some Trump jokes just to differentiate.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great. Yeah.
Like I couldn't, I'm like, and then I turn on Jimmy Kimmel. It's nothing but Trump jokes. It's like, you guys never get tired of making fun of the village idiot. And then the news media also, by the way, Ted Koppel was the one who pointed this out to Brian Stelter right in his face. And he said, you guys love Donald Trump. What was your ratings before and what's your ratings after?
Yeah.
And Brian Stelter famously said, well, it doesn't matter what our ratings are. And the entire room laughed right in his face.
Like that doesn't push them? Right, yeah. They're not influenced by that.
That's CNN's fucking media critic being laughed at about his media analysis, right? And so that's the beauty that's why I love live audiences, because laughter is involuntary. Right. It's a reflex. And so people just reflexively laughed in his face, and Ted Koppel just humiliated him. So again, I don't know what the goddamn question was, but it's fun to make fun of Brian Stelter whenever I can.
Don't you think the sort of relentless Trump jokes, it ends up driving people away from...
Turn me off.
Yeah, exactly. Like when he was first elected, I thought this is going to be the funniest thing ever following this presidency, and it's gonna, like, I'm personally gonna, just from a spectator's point of view, I'm gonna be interested in it. Within a week of his being elected, I just couldn't take it anymore, and it's been four years,
it's
right,
so
of
corny.
this stuff. I don't know.
It's so boring. And so when before the quarantine, I would go up in comedy clubs in front of people who didn't know me, didn't pay to see me on purpose. I was just doing a set, and so these are just regular people. And then I would go up and I would say exactly what I told you. I said, a lot of people like to make fun of Donald Trump. I'd rather make fun of the people who lost to him.
Right.
That's more fun for me. And so I would launch into it, and people would go along. I mean, I think people are right where you are, Matt. They're where I am. They realize he's the village idiot, but Jesus Christ, how did you guys lose to him? How do you not have that? And why has nothing gotten better in my life? Why the Democrats took over the Congress? What have you guys done? So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to pass Medicare for all and then make the Senate Republicans kill it so they can run on it. But they're not doing Medicare for all. They don't want to run on it. It's hilarious. I mean, if a foreign government took over our country and wanted to hurt us, they couldn't do a better job than Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and Donald Trump are doing right now. And the media just sits there and lets it happen. They bring out Nancy Pelosi and they high-five her and call her queen. And she called Donald Trump fat. Well, she screws America, eats ice cream while there's 10,000 people in a fucking food line.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about how
the luxury the designer ice cream flavors. That was a great move.
Yeah. Super move. I don't think Trump's going to use that in the campaign at all.
I know. Slash already has.
What's your prediction about, or do you have one about November? Or because I'm kind of two minds of this. Like the Democrats are doing everything wrong, but all of the data suggests that they still have a pretty good shot of winning the Democrats despite everything else. So what's your thought about? Next year?
So Joe Biden is not as repulsive as Hillary Clinton, even demented.
Right.
So he has a chance.
Even dead. Right?
Even dead. Yes, he has. You're right.
Weekend at Biden's. We got to make a thing of that. Yeah.
But at any moment, Trump could outleft the Democrats. He's already done it several times, right? So he expanded Medicare to cover people who are sick with coronavirus. So if you get coronavirus, you go to the hospital. There's no copay. There's no this. There's no deductible. There's no after billing. There's nothing. You get taken care of until you're well, until you're completely well, and the government just wires the money to the doctor or to the hospital. The Democrats didn't offer that. They didn't come up with that idea. It was Mitt Romney and Steve Mnuchin who wanted to do direct cash payments to Americans. Nancy Pelosi is the one who wanted to means test it and stop it. So it's very easy for Trump to outleft the Democrats, which is exactly what he did to Hillary Clinton. He promised everybody health care. He didn't give it to them, but at least he knew how to promise. He said he ran against the TPP. He ran against NAFTA. Now he redid
and Wall Street.
Wall Street. And of course he feels his... Yeah, and then he goes and does the bidding of Wall Street. The new NAFTA doesn't help people, but the Democrats passed it for him, so now he can run on it. It's unbelievable what's going on. So anything can happen, Katie. Trump could easily outleft the Democrats again. So this idea of voting for Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton was not the lesser of two evils. Barack Obama was not the lesser of two evils. You think John McCain would have been allowed with as much ease as the left allowed Barack Obama to kick 5.1 million families out of their house in the middle of a recession, while he made the banks bigger, while he made the Bush tax cuts permanent, while he took us from fucking 2 wars to 7? Do you think they would have let John McCain and Sarah Palin do that without fucking screaming and fighting? They would have joined the people that occupy Wall Street, but the fucking corporate left went to fucking sleep. Barack Obama was not the lesser of two evils.
Well, a lot of people, they equate the rejection of the lesser of two evils philosophy that you're, mentioning now, or that you subscribe to, they dismiss it as what is it? Accelerationism, which is, the idea that it won't get better until it gets worse. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying it gets worse.
I'm saying it just keeps getting worse. So this voting strategy that they've been advocating since I was a kid, since Ronald Reagan, has led us to 80% of workers living paycheck to paycheck, and Donald Trump. So and 30 million people don't have health care, 80 million people underinsured, 600,000 bankruptcies a year. That's what the lesser of two evils. The rest of the world has this shit figured out, and they're still protesting. The rest of the world has 5, 6 fucking parties, health care, education, and retirement, and they're still protesting. And so when you have the lesser of two evils, what it does is it silences people. When you advocate for the lesser of two evil voting, you take the legs out from underneath protest. I'm not going to wait until November to start protesting Joe Biden's warmongering. I'm going to fucking start right now. And that's what they're counting on. And that's what Bernie's counting on, by the way. Bernie wants you to shut up. Bernie doesn't want you to criticize Joe Biden or start a third party.
Yeah, that's what he should do.
That's his role, is to make sure you don't start a third party. It's fucking brilliant, and he does it perfectly.
I do think that there have been historic moments where there was logic to the lesser of two evils thing, but I also think there are historic moments when it doesn't have logic. Like, I think Carter would have been a lot better than Reagan, but then once Reagan came in, it kind of
Carter wasn't an evil.
Right,
I think the point is it does a lot more damage when you have Democrats selling free trade policies or Wall Street bailouts or warrantless surveillance or endless war. Like the long-term effect of that is that it takes away the ability to protest any of those things. Right.
And right now they're all they're all glorifying the intelligence community and the FBI, the people who undermine the left, the traditional, again, no sense of history whatsoever.
Right.
And I tried, when I was at the Young Turks, do you know the FBI is going to infiltrate you if you ever get any fucking power? You know that? And now you're propping them up from a puke like James Comey and Robert Mueller, who lied us into the goddamn Iraq war. Robert Mueller on tape lying us into the Iraq war. And he's somehow your hero. So the country is on its way to collapse. I don't mean to be to end on such a negative note. My cynicism cannot keep up with the Democratic Party's reality. What is happening right now, it's impressive. In fact, it's impressive how much they can rape the country right now, and with a straight face, and how the media gives them a pass. It's impressive what's happening. I mean, if you look at it that way, just on the sheer criminality of what's going on right now, it is unbelievably impressive. Here's another analogy. This is what's going on right now. Our house is on fire. And the Congress, instead of sending the fire department, they sent a bunch of criminals and they robbed our house while it's on fire, and they still didn't put the fire out.
Right.
That's what's happening right now. And people are telling me I'm too hard on Bernie, who voted for that shit.
They added some kerosene.
That's right. And not only that, he gave them cover. What I tell you, a betrayal of America, not just progressives, but every person who voted for that betrayed America. And what people should be doing is pressuring them, because that's what works, idiots. Fucking pressure. You don't fucking defend them from criticism. You pressure them, especially after they just betrayed you 1,000% at a nuclear level. And you don't know they did that because you're not fucking informed.
You mentioned the way that the people are supporting the FBI, the NSA, CIA. It seems like when I talk to people, it's younger people who are self-identify as like on the left or Democrats, for whom that's particularly true. It's like why is that? Where is this affection for the security agencies coming from? Like I don't really get it.
I just think it's a knee-jerk response to Donald Trump, and they don't have any. They're young, so they don't have any sense of history about what happened. They're not taught about what happened to Fred Hampton.
Right.
They're not taught about. They're not even taught about the New York police infiltrating Muslim mosques, and they're not taught about anything.
Right.
Right. Perfect example of that is, remember the no-fly list? I thought that was a great example. Like, that was used as a Democratic talking point, and John Lewis was presenting the Republicans as, traitors, because as an what was it? It was a gun. They made it into a guns issue. Right? Because you weren't supposed, they didn't want people to get guns if they were on the no-fly list, but they totally missed the point that the no-fly list was a totally racist, Islamophobic thing, and that people who had the last name, like, you know, who had a Muslim
they were informing employers and your bank and all kinds of, I mean, like all kinds of stuff that was terrifying, you know, if you just, and you there was no process for being on or off the list. So,
right.
Yeah. But
I mean, Matt, but don't you both of you see, you know, they used to say, "Oh, well, the right-wing media is in its own world. It's this non-reality based world."
Right.
Well, we have two non-reality based worlds now. So when I go on Twitter and I see grown-up people saying that, you know, Obamagate is just another hoax. And that it's
a conspiracy theory, they say.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy theory. Yes, it is a conspiracy. And do you know people are charged with conspiracies in court every fucking day because they're committing conspiracies? Do you know what they were charging Trump with was a conspiracy with the Russians?
Right.
So that was
based on a conspiracy theory, though, that extra level. Yeah.
Right.
And again, there's going to be a rude awakening for people who think this is QAnon. It's not. There's, you know, right? Like, I get the overselling of it and everything, but there's stuff in this Obamagate thing that's real. It's not going to go away, right? Of course.
Well, first of all, they go, well, Flynn lied. You can't deny that. Yes, you can. In fact, the FBI said they didn't even think he lied if you look at their notes afterwards. What they did was they fucking used, so they threatened his son with prosecution, and they threatened him with other prosecution from his dealings with Turkey. And they said, unless you agree to plead guilty to this Russiagate thing, which we're not going to send you to prison for. So he took the deal. Right. That's what happened. If you look at the notes from the FBI, even they say they didn't think he misrepresented on purpose. And so here's the key thing that people are missing. When the FBI went over to talk to Flynn, they already knew what was in that phone conversation because they had a transcript of it. Guess who else knew they had a transcript of it? General Flynn.
Yeah, he says so.
He goes, well, you guys have a transcript. Why are you asking me about this? You know what I said. And then they still charge him with lying. So what that is the FBI took a perfectly normal conversation that he had with a Russian ambassador, and they then tried to get somebody, which is not a crime, and then they knew exactly everything he said in it, which was not a crime. Then they tried to get him to misremember something and said he lied. So they invented a crime, and that's what the FBI does all fucking time, by the way. They're nefarious, evil, criminal actors who have been overthrowing governments all their fucking lives. They admit it now on TV. The ex-deputy director of the FBI was on Tucker Carlson 3 years ago, and he said, you know, it was used to be our directive when we were in the FBI to make sure socialists and progressives didn't make it into government because they would muck up government. He admitted that. Right. And how do they keep people out of government? They leak stories. That's just exactly what they did to Flynn. They unmask people. They leak story. By the way, that unmasking, when they leaked that story about Flynn, that is so criminal. That's more criminal than what Chelsea Manning.
Yeah, it's a felony. It's a 10 years. Yeah.
Not only so there's the FBI committing the exact crimes that they're saying other people are committing, and it's worse. By the way, they lied to the FISA court, and then you get Jim Comey comes out and says, "Well, you know, my concern is this systemic?" Of course, it's systemic. You fucking liar. The one time we take a look at a FISA application and we find 17 lies, the one time we get to look at a secret court filing, and you guys are lying nonstop. Of course they're lying. The FBI is a criminal organization, for fuck's sake. And that's why it's so depressing to me. And I would have such resentment for the people on the left who pushed and propped up the FBI. And I told them to their face not to do this because this is what was going to happen. And I thought they were all smarter than me and more mature than me. And they're all dumber than me, more cowardly than me. And they have a herd mentality. Mm-hmm. Well, in journalism, if you have a herd mentality, that's the death of journalism. And because I come from comedy and I'm not trying to get a job in fucking journalism, it's nothing to it to see through this bullshit. How is it that I know this shit? Again, I'm not even trying.
Right. Jimmy, what happens if all of this results in Biden winning the election in November? All of this behavior they're going to see it as being validated.
Right.
By that.
Yes, I know.
Are you worried about that?
I'm not. The bigger worry is what has already happened with the CARES Act, what's happened to our economy, and we're only slowly going to find out exactly how bad it is. So it doesn't really matter going forward. We're turning into Brazil. So and we're doing it to ourselves. You know, when I was a kid, one of the Russian, I forget who it was, a Russian president, I was real little, said that America will not be destroyed from the outside, it will be destroyed from the inside. That is exactly what's happening. People don't realize that their way of life is being destroyed right now by the people they voted for. They're doing it on unanimous votes. They're ruining your country on unanimous votes, and not one fucking person will stand up for you. Not one. Even on a signaling bill, a wish list, they vote. They won't fucking stand on a symbolic bill. Only, what was it, Pramila Jayapal or one person voted against it. That's it. So right now we're on the Titanic. It's going down, and the progressives are playing in the band.
Right.
So I'm on my show, I'm interviewing organizers and union activists. Yeah. And I'm asking for I had Chris Smalls on, you know, the famous from Amazon who was fired. Yeah. And then that vice president of Amazon, you know, he quit,
the guy who quit. Yeah.
And he lauded those people, the union activists. And so now they're starting to do more things. Juneteenth is coming, and they're going to have a big action for that. They did one on May Day. So I have a strike page at my website. I'm interviewing those people. I'm going to have on some activists who helped with the Hong Kong protest. Now, I know there's a lot of problems with the whole Hong Kong protest, but what I want to do is follow their technique, the pulse. That I don't care what the politics were in Hong Kong. What I want to do is I want to copy their techniques of the pulse protest, because they're able to get 3 million people in the street of a city worth 6 million people. I mean, that's amazing. That's real power. So that's what we have to do here. Instead of, you know, like if you go to Occupy Wall Street, you're all eventually going to go home. And they know it, right? Just like Afghanistan. We're eventually going to fucking leave. They know it. They're still just waiting, right? So that's why I want. So I'm putting my energy into things that actually could help, instead of defending politicians and sending out emails and fucking impotent tweets that we demand this. Will you fucking asshole, Bernie? Would you do something to get it? Would you actually ever use your following? Would you actually threaten the establishment to withhold your vote from them? You'll never, ever do anything, because you're an 80-year-old guy who wants to be friends with Joe Biden instead of fuck that guy up.
I just want to say one thing pro Bernie, and I think that I should be lauded for my how much I
how well you took this.
Yes, no, because I was really angry when Bernie dropped, as people could see in real time on Useful Idiots. But I do think that something valuable that Bernie Sanders did was he tapped into outrage, and now you could say that he squandered it, but he did show what running on like more righteous indignation looked like. He also made it a lot easier for people to accept socialism, socialist concepts, all that stuff. That became way less radioactive.
I think reality, you know how people like to say 70% of the country is for Medicare for all now?
Right. Yes.
90% of Democrats. I think reality made that happen. People wanted that when Barack Obama was passing his corporate giveaway in 2008, and he wouldn't even give us a goddamn public option. That was Barack Obama's choice. That wasn't Joe Lieberman. That was Barack Obama's choice. Right. He went to Dennis Kucinich's district. He didn't go to Joe Lieberman's state. So anyway, so I think, credit to Bernie for running on Medicare for all and making it his signature issue when it's super popular.
Right. But to be fair, no, that's true. He didn't have to convince people about that. But to be fair, he showed those issues were popular, were not fringe, the way that all politicians and media like to pretend.
Yes, correct.
Jimmy, thanks so much. Keep at it. Keep giving everybody shit. Show's amazing. And thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, back at you. I love your show. I wish you would do more of them.